The story begins on Lucheng Pedestrian Street, dated March 10. The streets are bright and bustling, filled with tall buildings covered in colorful signs. Inside a dimly lit office, a man's voice breaks the silence. He asks a question with a sharp tone. "Kid, do you know what it means to borrow 5 million yuan from me?" A plant glows faintly under the light, while in the background, several men sit around a table. One of them, Zhang Yang, the boss of the Dihai gang, and an underground moneylender in Lucheng, leans back in his chair. He smirks, explaining that his interest rates are quite high. Lighting a cigarette, he takes a slow drag before continuing. Smoke rises as his eyes narrow with amusement. Across from him sits a nervous young man, trembling as sweat runs down his face. Two large bodyguards stand behind him, their shadows falling over his chair. Trying to sound confident despite his fear, he tells brother Zhang that as long as he is willing to lend him the money, the interest rate can be as high as needed. Zhang Yang leans forward, resting his chin on his hands. His tone turns calm yet dangerous. He says all right, and tells the boy that it will be 4% daily interest. He will lend him 5 million, and he must pay back 7 million half a year later. He also tells the boy to write an IOU for 7 million first. Then Zhang Yang's eyes glint coldly, as he adds that, at the same time, he must provide collateral of equal value. The young man trembles as he nervously holds out a document. His voice shakes as he speaks, telling brother Zhang that it is his house's property deed, and asking him to take a look. Zhang Yang takes the paper and examines it with a faint smile. He comments that the house is a bit old now, and worth only about 3 to 4 million yuan at most. In his mind, he scoffs, thinking how foolish it is for someone to use a large flat apartment over 140 square meters for a high-interest loan. To him, it is like a sheep willingly walking into a wolf's den. Leaning back in his chair, Zhang Yang says with a smirk that the young man named Chen cannot borrow 5 million with just that house. He tells him plainly that the deal can't be done. Panicked, the young man clasps his hands together and pleads. He begs brother Zhang not to refuse him, saying that even 4 million yuan would be enough. He tries to sound confident, claiming he has consulted a master who said his luck is good recently, and that he would earn the money back several times over soon. Zhang Yang relaxes in his chair, resting his arms behind his head. He says he can only lend 3.5 million yuan, claiming that any more and he would lose money. Inside, he sneers to himself, thinking that the young man is nothing but a gambling fool despite his age, and now he has him completely under his control. The young man's expression brightens instantly. He thanks brother Zhang over and over, promising that he will repay the money quickly. Zhang Yang leans forward with a cold smile, resting his chin on his clasped hands. He tells the young man that since he has agreed to the terms, he must pay back 4.9 million yuan within 3 months. If he fails to do so, his house will be taken as collateral. Then, in a calm tone, he adds that if there is no problem, the young man only needs to write the IOU, and the funds will be released within 3 days. The young man nods nervously, glancing down at the paper in his hands. He says there is no problem, but hesitates for a moment, before adding that he has one condition. Zhang Yang raises an eyebrow, intrigued, and leans in slightly, asking what it is. 10 minutes later, the deal is done. Outside the building, the young man steps out smiling, clutching his documents. One of Zhang Yang's men stands by the door, seeing him off with a polite tone, saying, "Thank you for your patronage, brother Chen. Take care." The young man looks at his phone and sees a message appear on the screen. His mobile account has received 3.5 million yuan. Relief and excitement flash in his eyes. After confirming the money, the young man smiles and calls Zhang Yang an idiot. His expression darkens as his eyes glow with a faint red light. A cold smile creeps across his face. He whispers to himself that the apocalypse will descend in 1 month, and when that happens, who would be left to repay this useless loan? With the money now in his hands, he vows to prepare well this time. He does not intend to live the same miserable life he lived in his previous one. In his previous life, a catastrophic natural disaster had struck the blue star. It was a terrifying event that completely altered the planet's ecosystem. The sun unleashed a surge of violent solar radiation, and the Earth was engulfed in searing light. The global temperature soared to nearly 50 degrees Celsius, turning the world into a blazing inferno. Under the burning skies, humanity was plunged into chaos. A 30-day high-temperature apocalypse began. Cities melted, the ground cracked, and the once living world became a wasteland of fire. In the ruins, even the animals turned feral. A black wolf with glowing red eyes gnawed hungrily at the remains of a scorched human arm. Meanwhile, back in the present, Zhang Yang laughed loudly in his office, holding the signed contract. He couldn't believe how easily the young man had agreed to raise the interest rate just to get the money faster. His laughter echoed as he mocked, saying that gambling dogs like him didn't deserve a house anyway. One of his subordinates approached him, looking puzzled. The man hesitated before speaking, pointing out that the young man's house was worth over 4 million, yet he had accepted only 3.5 million without hesitation. The subordinate frowned and asked if there might be some kind of trick behind it. But Zhang Yang leaned back in his chair with a sly grin, his eyes gleaming under the dim light. He told his subordinate not to worry, saying he had seen plenty of gambling addicts before, people so desperate they would sell their own families for money. Compared to that, one house meant nothing. With a calculating tone, he ordered his man to contact the casino and rig the gambling results. When the time came, not only would they claim the house, but they also wouldn't let the borrower escape. He told him to sell anything valuable the man owned. The subordinate nodded eagerly and replied that he understood. The scene shifted to the city skyline glowing under the setting sun, where the tall HK Mall building stood against the horizon. The young man walked alone down the street, the orange light reflecting off his hoodie. He glanced at his phone and smirked. He thought to himself that there were still many good people in the world. All it took was a small increase in interest rates for that fool to hand over the money immediately. He chuckled softly, wondering if the man truly believed he could outsmart him. Calling the loan shark an old fool, he reminded himself that he had borrowed high-interest loans from every lender in Lucheng within a single day. He scoffed at the thought, confident that a mere rate hike meant nothing to him. As his eyes glowed faintly red, his smirk deepened. He declared that once the money was in his hands, no one should dream of ever getting it back. Then his thoughts darkened, as memories of his previous life resurfaced. The earth drying up, vegetation dying, and living creatures mutating. Civilization had crumbled, and humanity descended into chaos. Resources became scarce, forcing people to abandon morality, doing whatever it took just to survive. As the world descended into chaos, possessing resources became equivalent to possessing supreme wealth. Resources had become so scarce that people resorted to ruthless and violent means just to secure a small amount of survival materials. Even former billionaires and once famous stars were reduced to beggars. They had to kneel and plead for something as small as a sausage or a single cup of water. Those who couldn't secure resources were left to wander the streets aimlessly, eventually meeting a miserable death in the wastelands of the fallen world. But now, everything was different. The young man had been reborn. He still had time before the disaster struck, enough time to prepare in advance, to seize what he needed before the world burned again. He lowered his hand, touching his face as a chilling smile formed. His eyes glimmered with cold determination, and faint sparks of red flickered around him. Moments later, while walking through the city, he heard laughter from a nearby cafe. He turned his head slightly, his sharp gaze shifting toward the sound. Inside a brightly lit dessert shop, two women chatted excitedly near the counter. Chen immediately remembered that this was the shop that carried the legendary Shugao assassin, a luxury ice cream said to be even more expensive than Haagen-Dazs, known as the noble among ice creams. Seeing this, the young man's gaze sharpened. His expression turned serious as he looked toward the counter, a flicker of recognition crossing his eyes. Memories from his past life surfaced. He remembered how he had always been reluctant to buy that extravagant treat for himself, yet he had purchased it multiple times for Lu Wancheng. He clenched his jaw, thinking bitterly that giving such an expensive dessert to her had been a greater waste than feeding it to a dog. The more he thought about it, the more frustration boiled inside him. His heart ached with regret, and he suddenly burst out, declaring that he would enjoy it himself this time. Charging toward the counter with determined steps, he slammed his hand down and spoke loudly to the staff, his tone confident and unrestrained. He asked for 10 of every flavor of ice cream available in the shop. Hearing that, the people around him gasped in surprise. One of the women exclaimed in disbelief, wondering if he could really afford that much. Another, eyes wide, whispered that the way he made the order looked incredibly cool. Meanwhile, the young man stood calmly with one hand against his chin, thinking to himself, this time he would indulge in everything he had once denied himself. The shop attendant looked startled as she hesitated behind the counter. She stared at the young man in disbelief, thinking that although he was handsome, he didn't look rich at all. Her voice trembled slightly as she asked if he was serious about his order. Trying to confirm, she explained that their shop only sold high-end ice cream, and that 10 of each flavor would cost more than 20,000 yuan. She asked again, unsure if he really wanted to proceed. Nearby, a woman with long red hair sneered after overhearing the conversation. With a mocking smile, she said that someone like him, dressed so plainly, couldn't possibly afford such luxury. She laughed arrogantly and added that if he truly managed to pay for it, she would kowtow to him in public. The young man's eyes narrowed as he turned toward her. His tone calm but sharp. He asked if the words she had just said were true. The woman's smile faltered, her expression turning defensive. She snapped back, asking if he really expected her to bow to him, demanding to know what kind of person he thought he was to act so arrogantly. But the young man only smirked, his expression turning cold and confident. He told her that he was offering her a way out, but since she insisted on provoking him, she would definitely end up kowtowing. His voice lowered as he added with chilling certainty that not even God could stop it now, he had already spoken it into existence. The woman's face twisted in anger as she shouted at him, but the young man only smiled faintly, unfazed by her outburst. Turning toward the counter, he calmly instructed the shop attendant to pack all the ice cream in the store, saying that he would take everything. As the staff hesitated, he pulled out his phone and displayed his account balance, a staggering 20 million yuan. The woman's confident expression froze instantly, while the attendant's eyes widened in shock. Trembling, she stammered that she needed to confirm with her manager, and quickly hurried away. Moments later, the store manager arrived, bowing politely. He introduced himself as Fei Qi and asked what Mr. Chen required. The young man looked relaxed, his tone composed as he told the manager to calculate the total price of all the ice cream in the store and added casually that they wouldn't need to open for business today. Hearing this, Manager Fei blinked in disbelief, but quickly nodded with a respectful smile. He told the young man to wait for a moment as he checked the inventory, secretly astonished. He muttered to himself, wondering what kind of big shot would buy up an entire month's sales revenue in one go. He thought about how few people ever purchased such expensive ice cream. Most customers only came to admire it. After a brief calculation, the manager returned and announced that the merchandise currently on display was worth 70,000 yuan, while the total stock, including the inventory, was around 1 million yuan. Hearing this, the young man smirked slightly. He thought to himself that it wasn't all that expensive after all. Since the apocalypse was coming anyway, he might as well empty their entire stock after all. If the world ended, he could simply sit at home and enjoy his ice cream in peace. Chen Xiao calmly told the manager that he would transfer a deposit of 300,000 yuan first, and instructed him to deliver all the ice cream from their inventory to his address as soon as possible. The manager's eyes widened in surprise but quickly turned into excitement. He eagerly nodded and assured Chen Xiao that everything would be handled right away, calling him Brother Chen, with sudden respect. With a slight smile, Chen Xiao turned toward the group of women standing nearby. His voice was calm but confident as he said they could choose any ice cream they liked from the store. Everything was on him. The women gasped in shock. One of them exclaimed happily that Chen Xiao was paying for it all, while another blurted out in disbelief at how rich he was. Their faces lit up with excitement as they admired him, whispering that he looked even more handsome now. Chen Xiao stood tall with a relaxed grin, his arms open in a confident gesture. Then his expression shifted slightly as he turned his gaze toward the red-haired woman who had mocked him earlier. His tone turned sharp as he reminded her that his offer excluded her. He was still waiting for her to keep her word and kowtow to him. The woman froze, her confidence vanishing. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak but only managed to stammer weakly. Moments later, unable to bear the humiliation, she dropped to her knees before him, bowing her head low to the ground. Chen Xiao looked down at her with a calm smile, standing tall and composed as the others stared in stunned silence. He then looked calmly ahead, his eyes half-lidded, and his voice steady as he remarked that the woman should have known better than to show off. The scene then shifted to a peaceful view of a riverside lined with cherry blossom trees, petals drifting gently through the air under the glow of a warm sunset. Chen Xiao sat on a wooden bench, holding a popsicle in one hand, and taking a bite with a relaxed smile. He nodded to himself and commented that the ice cream, fittingly named Assassin, truly lived up to its reputation. Its taste and texture were exceptional. As he leaned back, he muttered softly while eating, but midway through his words, he lifted his hand. A sudden surge of blue light appeared, twisting the air in front of him. A dark, square-shaped portal shimmered into existence, surrounded by glowing energy lines. Chen Xiao explained to himself that his ability could keep anything inside it perfectly preserved, allowing him to enjoy fresh ice cream anytime he wanted. He smiled, amused by the thought, and casually flicked a small blue bag into the glowing portal. With a confident tone, he said that with this power, inviting over any star or young model wouldn't be a problem. Just thinking about it made him feel excited. Chen Xiao raised his hand as a black, glowing square appeared before him. He looked at it thoughtfully, his voice calm as he said that he hadn't expected his ability to be reborn along with him. He recalled that, in his previous life, abilities had only started awakening gradually after the apocalypse began. A faint smile appeared on his lips as he gazed at the mysterious power hovering above his palm. He admitted that he didn't fully understand how it worked, but he knew one thing for certain: this would become his greatest trump card in the days to come. He then sat back down on the bench under the cherry blossoms, petals drifting around him as the evening light glowed softly. In a quiet tone, he said that it was time to start preparing for what lay ahead, building a safe house, setting up cold storage, gathering weapons, and securing an energy reserve. With a small sigh, he muttered that he still had a lot to do. Just then, his phone suddenly chimed with a ringtone announcing, "Little Fairy is calling." Chen Xiao blinked in surprise and turned his head slightly. He pulled out his phone and frowned when he saw the name flashing on the screen, Liu Wancheng. His expression darkened as he muttered that it was her again, calling it bad luck. Chen Xiao paused when he saw the name, Liu Wancheng, glowing faintly in the darkness. After Chen Xiao's parents passed away, Liu Wanqing appeared in his life like a savior. In his grief and loneliness, he saw her as a source of warmth and light, someone who reached out a helping hand when the world felt empty. Back then, he was too naive to realize her true intentions. To him, she seemed like the light that had entered his dark world. But in reality, what she was after wasn't him, it was the inheritance his parents had left behind. Their relationship soon became one built on lies and manipulation. Chen Xiao remembered her sitting close to him, whispering softly that her mother insisted on certain conditions if he truly wanted to marry her. She told him that the large, fully paid apartment in the city center had to be written under her name, along with a bride price of 880,000 yuan. He complied, blinded by love. Yet it felt like falling into a bottomless pit. She kept asking for more, reaching again and again until all his savings were drained. Even that wasn't enough. She began pushing him to sell his ancestral home, just so she could have another luxury apartment in the city. When he hesitated, her tone turned manipulative, saying it was for their future, that his old family house wasn't worth keeping anyway. Then Chen Xiao's memories darkened. He remembered being forced down, humiliated and helpless as greed consumed her. Later, she stood beside another man in a dark room, smiling coldly as she introduced Chen Xiao like an object. She told the man, whom she addressed as young master, that Chen Xiao was the one she had mentioned before, the one who perfectly met the man's special material requirements. At that moment, Chen Xiao finally understood. The woman he once thought of as his savior had sold him out for her own gain. Chen Xiao's eyes burned with fury as memories of his past life resurfaced. When the apocalypse descended, chaos consumed the world. He had risked everything, his safety, his future, to protect Liu Wanqing. But in the end, she betrayed him without hesitation. To cling to someone stronger, she had sold him off like livestock. He remembered the cold floor, the smell of blood, and the shadow looming over him. His body trembled as the figure above observed him with detached curiosity, muttering that there was nothing particularly special about him. Then the man wondered aloud if he needed to eat him to see any real result. Chen Xiao's fate back then had been cruel beyond words. His voice echoed bitterly in his thoughts. In the end, he hadn't even been left with a complete corpse. Now, standing under the pale light with red eyes glowing faintly, Chen Xiao held his phone tightly, his expression dark yet calm. A sinister smile curved across his lips as he looked at the name on the screen. He whispered coldly that since Liu Wanqing had run right into him again, it was time to properly settle the score. The scene shifted to a tall, luxurious building glimmering under the golden sunset, a high-end hotel. Inside, the sound of soft footsteps echoed across the floor. It was Liu Wanqing. Chen Xiao answered the call and asked gently if she had called him and whether something was the matter. Inside a brightly lit bathroom, Liu Wanqing stood in front of the mirror, her hair wrapped in a towel and a silk robe loosely tied around her. Speaking sweetly into her phone, she told Chen on the other end that she had been out playing with friends and had accidentally lost a gold necklace she really loved. She sighed dramatically, saying how heartbroken she felt about it. On the other side of the call, Chen Xiao's voice came through, calm yet laced with an unsettling tone. He spoke softly, asking what else he could possibly do. Of course, he said, he would buy his dearest darling a new one. His voice deepened into a faintly mocking tone as he added that one wasn't enough. She could buy 10 and wear them alternately if she wished. Hearing that, Liu Wanqing blinked in surprise at his sudden generosity. Her expression softened slightly, curiosity mixing with disbelief. She asked when he had suddenly become so generous. Calmly, Chen Xiao told her he had been lucky lately, that he had invested a bit in virtual currency and made a small profit. Of course, he added smoothly, when he earned money, he had to spend it on his darling. Hearing that, suspicion flashed across her face as she asked if he had fallen for some kind of scam, mentioning that virtual currencies were infamous for being unreliable. Chen Xiao's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He replied that whether it was a scam or not didn't matter. What mattered was whether he could make money in the next round. He said that small games were boring, and this time he planned to play big. Then his tone shifted subtly, becoming more serious. He mentioned that he was preparing to borrow a large amount of capital to invest even more. The loan, he explained, required a witness. Speaking with a dark smile forming on his face, he asked her to help him out, promising that once the deal was done, he would give her 5% of the loan amount as payment for her hard work. While Lu Wanqing stood in her bathrobe, hearing Chen's plan, a man's voice suddenly questioned her from nearby. He asked why she was taking so long, wondering what was making her drag her feet. Lu Wanqing immediately hid her phone and turned toward the man with a composed expression. She quickly smiled, stepping closer with a playful tone. Wrapping her arm around him, she called him honey, telling him sweetly that she would be ready soon, and asking him to wait for her. As she leaned against the older man, her eyes glimmered with calculation. Inwardly, she thought about how spending one night with this old man only earned her 5,000, yet Chen Xiao's offer for signing a document would give her 50,000. To her, it seemed like an easy choice. She dismissed any thought of risk, reasoning that it was only a signature. Besides, she believed Chen Xiao was too much of a coward to dare deceive her. A moment later, the call between them ended. Chen Xiao looked down at his phone screen, which displayed call ended. A faint, dark smile spread across his face, as his crimson eyes glowed with determination. He whispered coldly to himself, saying that he would wait for Lu Wanqing. Chen Xiao's voice continued in the background. He said quietly that it was now time to build his fortress. He met an architect, and, with a commanding tone, pointed to the building site and ordered that within 1 month, he wanted the place transformed into an impenetrable fortress. Chen Xiao stood in front of the building, his eyes sharp as he began listing out detailed construction plans. He explained that the windows would need to be made of bulletproof composite glass with invisible anti-theft mesh, and the walls reinforced into 3-meter-thick bulletproof exteriors. The entire structure needed to withstand earthquakes with a resistance rating of 8 or higher. He pointed upward, his expression confident, adding that the roof would be completely paved with solar panels and have an independent power generation system. To maintain air quality, it would also include an air purification and filtration system to block any external toxic gases. The architect standing before him, a man in glasses holding a laptop, began nervously reading from his notes. He explained that the fortress would include an independent ecological system capable of supplying 72 hours of oxygen and water circulation. It would also have explosion-proof doors, and the entry would require dual verification, both biometric recognition and a mechanical lock. Chen Xiao's voice grew firm as he summarized the plan, declaring that within 1 month, the entire building must be rebuilt into an impact-resistant fortress, equipped with a complete life support system. The architect stared at him, stunned by the absurd request. His thoughts raced as he wondered if Chen Xiao was some sort of doomsday prepper or just delusional from watching too many sci-fi movies. Chen Xiao narrowed his eyes, stepping closer and asking if the architect couldn't handle the job. He reminded him that his resume claimed he was a defense master who had designed bunkers for top billionaires. The man stammered nervously, adjusting his glasses as sweat ran down his temple. He admitted that Mr. Chen's requirements were indeed unique and of extremely high quality, but hesitated, mentioning that the main issue would be the budget. The architect pushed his glasses up, a sly grin spreading across his face as he thought to himself that Chen was just another rich fool brainwashed by doomsday theories, someone with too much money burning a hole in his pocket. But his expression shifted dramatically the moment Chen showed him the transfer confirmation on his phone. His eyes widened, and he almost stumbled backward in shock. Chen had already deposited 1 million as a down payment, saying calmly that the final payment could be named by the architect himself. Hearing that, the architect froze for a second, then burst with excitement. He shouted that the final payment would be whatever price he chose. Inwardly, he was overjoyed, thinking he had struck gold. He couldn't believe his luck. 1 job with this rich idiot, and he could achieve financial freedom. Chen, however, smiled with quiet confidence and reminded him that while he didn't care about the price, he did care about the quality of the work. He warned the architect to make sure the final inspection passed, because he valued solid materials and precision above all else. The 2 men leaned forward, shaking hands with forced smiles. The air between them felt like a clash of opposing flames. Chen's aura burning with fiery determination, while the architect's greed gleamed cold and sharp. Inwardly, the architect had his own plan. He decided to fleece Chen for all he was worth. Meanwhile, Chen thought to himself that he was going to make full use of this man's skills, laughing silently that once the apocalypse hit, the architect would have no way of finding him for the final payment. Later that night, Chen sat deep in thought. He said that with the fortress plan secured, the next step was gathering supplies, medicine, food, and daily necessities. Those were easy to handle, but there was something else that worried him more. Chen's mind echoed with a grim realization. He thought to himself that the most dangerous thing during the apocalypse wouldn't be natural disasters, but human nature itself once order was gone. In his vision, chaos and violence flashed before him. A monstrous shadow loomed with glowing red eyes, representing humanity's cruelty when laws collapsed. He muttered that cold weapons could easily be bought from hardware stores, but firearms, the kind capable of delivering a fatal blow, were much harder to obtain. Later that day, Chen walked alone through the quiet city streets, checking his phone with a focused look. A message appeared from an unknown contact. It read, "First-hand source, secretive channels, not what you can't think of, but what you can't find. Honest transaction, safety first." He quickly typed a reply asking, "How to buy?" Moments later, another message appeared on his screen, saying they would send him the address via private message. 8 p.m. tonight, no waiting for latecomers. That night, Chen walked through the dimly lit streets toward the meeting place. The air was cold, and the road was empty except for the faint glow of streetlights. He murmured to himself, wondering how much the seller wanted and where they should meet. Just as he continued walking under the blue streetlight, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed behind him. Several figures were approaching fast. A woman sprinted through the dark alley, her breathing heavy and desperate. Behind her, several men were in pursuit, shouting angrily for her to stop. Their voices echoed through the narrow streets as they hurled insults, demanding that she halt and calling her names. The woman's eyes were filled with fear, but she kept running without looking back. Her long hair whipped behind her as the sound of footsteps grew louder, but before they could catch up, the woman suddenly collided with someone standing at the corner. It was Chen. She immediately hid behind him. One of the men yelled again, his tone filled with rage, mocking her for trying to escape. "Keep running then," he shouted, before sneering, "You think you can cheat in my territory? You must be tired of living." Without hesitation, she clung to Chen's arm, trembling as she pleaded, asking him to please save her. Chen turned his head sharply, his expression shifting from confusion to shock when he saw her face clearly. Recognition flashed in his eyes. He muttered in disbelief, his heart pounding. "Is that her? Li Yu? How is she? In a place like this?" Under the cold blue glow of a streetlight, a group of thugs surrounded Li Yu. One of them held her firmly by the arm, while another swung a metal bat, pointing it threateningly toward Chen, who stood a few steps away. The gang leader, a man with blonde-streaked hair, glared furiously and shouted orders. Li Yu struggled desperately, her voice trembling as she cried out, her hair disheveled and her face twisted in pain. Seeing this, Chen's eyes darkened, and he muttered her name under his breath, Li Yu. Memories flickered through Chen's mind. Images of their school days resurfaced. He remembered her clearly, the academic goddess from middle school, the girl countless boys had admired from afar. Back then, she was bright, confident, and full of promise. Now, standing before him, she was a shadow of that memory, bruised, trembling, and pleading for help. Chen's jaw tightened, his gaze cold and focused. The tension in the alley thickened. It was clear that he was no longer just a bystander. His expression hardened as he listened to the thug gripping her hair and shouting in rage, demanding that she hand over the money. "Otherwise," the man growled, yanking her head back, "don't even think about leaving." One of the thugs, a man with blonde-streaked hair, sneered with a twisted grin as he spoke to his bald companion. He suggested that there was no point in wasting time talking. If the woman couldn't pay, he said mockingly, she could simply pay with her body. His tone was filled with cruelty and amusement. Before they could act further, a calm but firm voice cut through the night. Chen stepped forward, his expression cold and his presence commanding. A faint green light shimmered around him as he told them to let her go. The men turned, startled by the interruption. The woman's captor hesitated, still gripping her by the hair, while the others exchanged glances. The leader frowned, irritation flashing across his face, and shouted angrily, "Where did this reckless kid come from, trying to play the hero in front of me? I'll cripple you first. He lunged forward with fury, his fist swinging toward Chen with deadly intent. But in that instant, Chen's eyes narrowed, a chilling red gleam flashing in his gaze. In a blur of motion, Chen moved faster than the thug could react. His body turned sharply, and before the attacker could finish his swing, Chen dodged and got into a perfect position to counterattack. Chen's hand shot out, grabbing the attacker's wrist mid-swing. A sharp crack echoed through the alley, halting the assault in an instant. The bald man screamed in agony, shouting that his hand was broken. Before he could react further, Chen's expression turned cold. His red eyes glowed faintly as he lunged forward with terrifying speed. His fist struck the man squarely, sending him flying backward and crashing into the ground. Just as the alley fell silent, a glowing blue system window appeared before Chen, displaying detection of intense negative emotions. Fear plus severe pain, anger. A moment later, another notification flickered. Negative emotion harvesting system has activated successfully. Chen Xiao stood amidst the swirling smoke, a faint smile crossing his lips as he reacted with surprise. He realized that this strange system hadn't existed in his previous life. Suddenly, one of the thugs grabbed the silver-haired woman, pulling her close and pressing a weapon to her neck. With a crazed expression, he shouted for Chen Xiao not to move, threatening to kill her if he did. Before Chen Xiao could react, a man suddenly appeared and threw a brick directly at the thug. The brick slammed into the man's face, sending him flying backward as he smashed through debris, bricks and dust scattering through the air. The woman gasped in shock, barely believing what she had seen. The remaining two thugs froze, their eyes widening in horror as a heavy block of debris landed right beside them, making them flinch in fear. Just then, a new figure appeared at the end of the alley. He stepped forward with a cocky grin and mocked the scene, saying it was shameful for a group of grown men to gang up on a single girl. Enraged by the taunt, one of the bald thugs raised his bat, charging forward furiously while shouting that they were asking for death. The thugs rushed in, swinging their weapons recklessly. Chen Xiao moved first, his expression calm but sharp. With a swift motion, he deflected one attack, his hands striking with precise force. At the same time, the new boy launched a powerful kick, sending another thug flying backward. The alley echoed with heavy impacts as bodies hit the ground one after another. Chen Xiao's eyes glowed faintly red, his movements too fast for the eye to follow. In an instant, he appeared in front of another thug and delivered a clean, devastating punch that sent the man reeling. Working in perfect sync, both men struck at the same time. Chen Xiao's fist slammed into one attacker's jaw, while his companion's kick sent another crashing onto the pavement. As the last remaining thug staggered, Chen Xiao clicked his tongue in mild annoyance before finishing him with a single decisive blow. The man collapsed to the ground, gasping in pain as Chen Xiao's foot pressed down on his chest, leaving the entire street silent. Chen Xiao and the new boy stood tall under the streetlights, their feet pressing down on the fallen thugs. The defeated men groaned in pain, unable to move. Chen Xiao's red eyes narrowed slightly as he muttered a single word, "Scram." Hearing that, the thugs panicked, scrambling to their feet and fleeing in terror. As they ran, a system notification appeared before Chen Xiao's eyes, stating that he had gained 1 fear, 1 panic, 1 severe pain, 1 despair, and 1 humiliation point. Another notification followed, informing Chen that his negative emotion value had exceeded 10 for the first time. Space expansion permission unlocked. A third notification appeared, urging Chen to work hard to harvest, grow bigger, and become stronger. As the men disappeared into the distance, Chen glanced at the fading system window and smirked faintly. Harvest negative emotions? Interesting, he murmured. Moments later, the purple-haired girl he had saved looked up at him, her voice trembling with relief. She thanked him, saying she hadn't expected to meet him there. Chen Xiao extended a hand toward her, his tone softening slightly, as he asked if she was hurt. He then handed his jacket to the girl, telling her to put it on. She looked at him, her expression gentle with gratitude, and thanked him sincerely. She explained that she had something urgent to do and needed to leave right away. Chen Xiao simply nodded and told her to be careful. After she left, the man in the colorful shirt grinned and stepped forward, teasingly calling Chen Xiao a hero for saving a beautiful woman. He introduced himself as Mu Chang and asked for Chen Xiao's name. Chen Xiao replied calmly, saying that he was the one who had arranged to meet Mu Chang. Hearing that, Mu Chang's eyes widened in surprise before he burst into laughter, calling it fate that they had run into each other. Then, striking a dramatic pose, Mu Chang shouted his code phrase, "Heavenly King covers Earth Tiger." Chen Xiao raised an eyebrow and looked at him with a straight face, replying, "You are 250. Mu Chang froze in confusion, completely dumbfounded. Just then, the system suddenly activated in Chen Xiao's mind. A glowing blue window appeared above Mu Chang's head, displaying detection of intense negative emotions. Dumbfounded, +1. Bewilderment, +1. Embarrassment, +1. Chen Xiao was shocked to see this and stared at Mu Chang in awkward silence, the atmosphere turning strangely comical. Chen Xiao raised his hand playfully and shouted with a grin, jokingly saying, "Pagoda suppresses river demon." He told Mu Chang not to mind it, saying he was just making a little joke to lighten the mood. Hearing that, Mu Chang's face twisted in disbelief, his tone filled with both frustration and amusement as he shouted back, "Damn it, brother, that joke of yours, you're ruthless, follow me." The scene then shifted to a quiet night outside a 2-story house, its windows glowing warmly under the streetlight. Inside, Mu Chang handed Chen Xiao a wooden box. Inside were a pistol, several bullets, and a magazine neatly arranged. Mu Chang explained that it was a sturdy Russian-made gun, durable and reliable, but warned that there weren't many bullets, so he should use them sparingly. Chen Xiao inspected the weapon calmly, while Mu Chang continued with a grin, saying that since Chen Xiao's skills were impressive, and he seemed like an interesting guy, he would offer it at a friendship price, considering it as making a new friend. Chen Xiao smiled faintly and replied, "Not bad, thanks." As Mu Chang watched closely, he noted how skillfully Chen Xiao handled the gun, his movements smooth and precise. His sharp eyes narrowed as he muttered to himself that the man was clearly an expert. Since everything checked out, there was no problem. Then Chen Xiao turned slightly, his tone casual yet teasing. He asked Mu Chang with a smirk whether the gun came with a free suppressor, if there was a warranty card, and whether he could maybe throw in another box of bullets. Hearing that, Mu Chang's eyes widened in shock, completely caught off guard by the unexpected remark. Mu Chang's expression froze in disbelief. He shouted inwardly that it was already a friendship price and demanded to know if Chen Xiao even understood what that meant. Frustrated, he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, thinking that people were paying double the price for this gun on the black market, yet this guy still wanted a warranty and free extras. His anger spiked as he glared at Chen Xiao, his thoughts screaming that it felt like Chen was treating the deal as if he were buying home appliances. He almost wanted to yell for Chen Xiao to just rob him instead. At that moment, the system activated again in Chen Xiao's mind. Detection of intense negative emotions, shock +1, heartache +1, speechless +1. Seeing this, Chen Xiao simply smiled and waved his hand casually. He told Mu Chang that if it wasn't possible, then never mind. He was only asking. He said he would stick to the original price and transferred the money immediately. Mu Chang stood there, speechless, as Chen Xiao calmly finalized the transaction. Now Chen's supplies and the gun were secured. It was time to get revenge. Outside, the scene shifted to a brightly lit building beneath the night sky, the moon glowing overhead. Inside, under a dazzling chandelier, a woman in a red dress stood silently by the window. Her long blonde hair flowed down her back as city lights reflected through the glass behind her. She was Liu Wanqing. Wearing the red dress, she complained softly, asking why Chen had taken so long to arrive. She said her legs were tired from standing, and nervously asked whether the thing he had mentioned earlier truly involved no risk. Chen smiled and pulled her close, his tone smooth and reassuring. He told her it was just a formality, and that he adored her too much to ever deceive her. Hearing this, Liu Wanqing leaned back with a cigarette between her fingers, her expression turning sly. She thought to herself that Chen was just a gullible fool who had nearly sold his blood once just to buy her a handbag. She smirked, convinced that he was too infatuated to ever betray her. Then they went inside. In the room, Zhang Yang sat across from her, flanked by 2 bodyguards. He praised her confidence and said with a grin that her signature was beautiful. Liu Wanqing smiled faintly, unaware of the trap she had just walked into. Zhang Yang, wearing a cunning smile, watched as her signature appeared on the contract. Inwardly, he mocked her, thinking that she believed she was only signing as a guarantor, when in truth, once her name was written, the entire debt would belong to her. As she signed, the scheming man's thoughts grew darker. He thought that once she failed to repay the debt, she would have no choice but to pay with her body. He grinned through a puff of smoke, murmuring to himself with a sinister laugh that when she couldn't repay, that would be when his fun began. Across the room, she stood before Chen Xiao, unaware of his calm expression as he watched her. Inwardly, Chen Xiao smirked and told her silently to go ahead and sign the so-called indentured servitude contract. He thought that her greed would perfectly cover the final payment for his safe house, Everything went unexpectedly smoothly, and he quietly thanked Liu Wanqing in his mind for making things so easy. Later that night, Chen Xiao stood outside a newly constructed building beside the architect, who proudly gestured toward it. He assured Chen that everything inside was reinforced to 120% of military standards, complete with heat insulation, soundproofing, explosion resistance, and anti-drilling layers. He boasted that the house could even withstand several nuclear bombs. Chen Xiao inspected the structure and nodded in approval. With a faint smile, he commented that the quality was good. The man, wearing dark sunglasses, grinned widely and said Chen could come back anytime if he needed more work done. Afterward, Chen Xiao sat alone in his new home, placing a case on the table as the television played in the background. The news anchor's voice filled the room, reporting that due to unprecedented, super-strong solar flare activity, the world was about to experience continuous extreme high-temperature weather on a global scale. The broadcast continued, warning that temperatures across many regions would soon break all historical records, urging every citizen to prepare for protection. As the reporter's voice echoed faintly in the background, Chen Xiao wrapped a cloth around the barrel of his gun, his grip tightening. He lifted the weapon and pressed it against his temple with a faint smile, whispering a single word, "Finally." His crimson eyes sharpened with determination. The reflection of burning light danced within them as he turned toward the massive window, his expression calm and resolute. The golden-orange light from outside cast a fiery glow across his face as he muttered quietly, "It's here." Outside, the sky was engulfed in a blinding inferno. A colossal, sun-like flare loomed over the city skyline, flooding the world in crimson light. Chen Xiao stood before it in silence, gun in hand, watching as the fiery apocalypse began to descend upon the world.